Welcome to the UN Brief. Today we interview Justin Vaisse. He is the founder and Director General of the Paris Peace Forum that will take place in Paris on the 10th and 11th of November. It is a truly multi-stakeholder forum that calls for academics, thought leaders, government officials, diplomats, and the private sector to think on the future of society. Representatives from Microsoft, TikTok, Anthropic, and other technology companies will be sharing their views and the latest data on generative AI and the current and potential uses of large language models. Thank you for watching and listening to the UN Brief, and don't forget to subscribe. Having a moment where multilateralism is being questioned again, right? Because we can't seem to find a diplomatic solution for the crisis in the Middle East. In the last week, we've seen that, right? So tell us a little bit for our audience who is not familiar with the Paris Peace Forum. When did you start and what was the focus in the last few years, and what you see changing this year with the events of last week?
So we started in 2018, which was the year of the centenary of the armistice of World War I. And so that was the opportunity that sort of precipitated a decision to create the forum. And the idea then was, how do we answer those global problems that multilateral institutions, starting with the UN at the center of the system, has difficulty solving? So how do we bring innovative answers to the question of coordination and governance on issues as complicated as global health, as climate, obviously, biodiversity, refugees, etc. The idea was not to create a conference where we would only discuss about things. Discussing is always nice, but we were really action-oriented. The idea was not to do geopolitics. That is, we don't have the added value to bring Putin and Zelensky to negotiate and make peace. We don't have the ability to bring Hamas and the Israeli government to negotiate and make peace. That is beyond our capacities. What we can do, however, is bring a very diverse crowd of actors, be they heads of state and government, international organizations, civil society, philanthropic foundation, NGOs, etc., and the private sector as well, into coalitions and initiatives that actually answer these challenges. In other words, what we do is really threefold. One is the event. So every year in November, we convene these actors in order to try and find solutions. The second thing we do is we have this call for projects that we do every spring. And so every year we have around 500 applications from around the world, and we bring about 50 to 80 of them in Paris during the forum to show that there is this energy, this enthusiasm, these solutions, sometimes very smart ones, whether they come from NGOs or international organizations or others, and we present them during the forum. And the third thing we do is launch action coalitions around some of the most important and difficult issues that we have. For example, one of the most recent one is on critical minerals. I can get into more details after. Another one is on how do we preserve the space environment. Another one is on climate overshoot. What do we do after we overshoot 1.5? Etc. So these are the three things we do. We both an event and a policy organization.
Right, and you seem to have at the center of it all innovation, right? You're looking for innovative solutions, be it to address climate change or telehealth or digital health, but also tell us a little bit from last year, what changes this year, since we had in the past week a situation in the Middle East, which sort of brings into question so much of what we knew so far about how can we support in terms of conversations around the topics of peace and security.
So, obviously the context is very dramatic, but I think we shouldn't lose sight of the long term and the structural challenges to peace in favor of the short term crisis oriented outlook, if you'd like. So, in other words, I'm really supportive of any negotiation, whether it's for Ukraine or for the Middle East, that would solve the problem, but we're not in a position to do it. What happens on the margins of the Paris Peace Forum is you have many conversations, this you cannot prepare a year in advance, right? So these we do sort of opportunistically, and we do when it's possible to do so, and we do. But what we do rather is the long-term work, the hard work of trying to solve issues. Let me give you an example. The COVID crisis revealed how difficult it was to have a good North-South cooperation. And in the context of the negotiation of the pandemic treaty, which should be adopted somewhere in the spring of 2024, one issue that we've worked on, gathering different actors, putting forward solutions, is how do you do fair benefit sharing? That is to say, how do you make sure that countries and medical networks in the South keep sharing material about new viruses so that everyone can work on them, so that we can create vaccines, etc., and get rewarded rather than punished for doing that. The case was very concrete with COVID, with a number of strains discovered, for example, in Zimbabwe and South Africa. They shared it with everyone so that everyone could start doing countermeasures. But in return, they got closed borders and no vaccines. So how do you change that? How do you put together different actors and create an incentive mechanism so that everyone co-creating these countermeasures can have a fair benefit? So it seems technical, but it's a very political issue, a North-South issue, on which we've been working for a year and a half now, and we're hoping to push some solutions forward in the context of that negotiation. That's a sort of a very precise example, but I have many examples like this, which show that we are a policy organization. We're trying to make these types of solutions happen and be adopted by the relevant actors.
And President Macron will be present too. He usually is, right? At least last year, I remember that he was there and was in conversation with several leaders from sub-Saharan Africa.
Absolutely. So President Macron has been very supportive of the forum, which is an independent organization, but that has received really good support from the president. This year, there will be an important discussion around him, and also people like Prime Minister Mia Mottley from Barbados, World Bank President Ajay Banga, and several African leaders on financing climate and development. It will be the follow-up to the June summit that was held in Paris on a new financial pact. So basically, the question is, how do you keep financing development, poverty, and the SDGs, and at the same time find resources and allocate resources to the green transition? There's no arbitration. We need to do both. But the problem is, how do you reform the Bretton Woods institutions and the whole financial system in order to find more resources and be able to do the two things at the same time? And so there will be a 2-hour session on trying to push this agenda forward, see what has been achieved since then at the G20, at the fall meetings of the World Bank and the IMF in Marrakesh, and preparing for COP28 soon. How can we help carry the ball and make sure that we score points on helping, especially countries from the global south, not only develop and fight poverty, but also do their own green transition at their rhythm?
Yes, reforming the Bretton Woods institutions seems always like a very far-fetched goal, but that we have to keep trying, right? And it seems like the conversation now it is gathering momentum precisely because the issue of climate change, right? That we need to support at least developed countries and developing countries. Tell us a little bit also about the loss and damage fund, which was discussed at the last COP, and also during the General Assembly this past September in New York, we had also conversations. There was a general part of one of the parallel events within the UN was the loss and damage fund discussions, which many countries participate, with Spain and Cuba, Samoan Islands, all talking about it. Tell us a little bit, what do you see is possible with the loss and damage fund? And this conversation will be pursued during the Paris Peace Forum, I imagine, too?
It will be mentioned in part of the discussions, but this one is sort of on a separate track, more on the UN side, and obviously what I think global governance is so complex on these issues that it's worth having multiple tracks, I would say, of conversation and several levers or instruments, if you'd like, to finance the green transition. Certainly, the UN track will be important. And hopefully we'll deliver on that. What we will be concentrating on, it really is a number of things, including, for example, debt relief clauses, debt suspension relief clauses that have been pushed forward at the World Bank, or, for example, innovative financing, meaning new taxes, international taxes, whether on capital transactions or on shipping or on oil and gas, etc. Ultimately, the two tracks could potentially reinforce one another, but at this point, we're sort of continuing on that discussion because it's well advanced, and the one on loss and damage has been really dealt with at the UN.
Right. And then to wrap it up, tell us a little bit about the program too. What other speakers have you already confirmed besides the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, which is always someone that everyone looks forward to meeting and hearing?
Absolutely, yeah. No, Mia Mottley is really important for the role that she's had in sort of jolting that discussion and priming the pump, as one would say. A couple of African leaders will be present, from President Tinubu from Nigeria to President Akufo-Addo from Ghana, most probably President Macky Sall from Senegal, and presidents from Mozambique, etc. It's really important because the forum is global. We've had, for example, strong representation from Latin America last year, including Venezuela. This time I've not forgotten it. But more importantly, and then Asia as well. But Africa is the most present at the forum, and of course, being sort of closer to where Paris is an important actor. Then we'll have a number of other voices. The forum really is multi-actor. So one of the, I think, strength of the forum is to be able to gather beyond heads of state and government, be they important figures like Jane Goodall, for example, or Razan Al Mubarak, the head of IUCN, which is not an international organization in the UN sense, or part of the UN family directly, or other actors, CEOs from companies, etc. One of the focuses will be on AI. Obviously, it's the year of generative AI, of LLMs, etc. So we'll have a number of tech thinkers. So not just people from the large companies who will be there, from Microsoft to Anthropic or TikTok or others, but also people who think about these issues and are able to take a step back and reflect on both the promises and the dangers, obviously, of AI, and also how best to offer a framework of governance of AI for the future. So we'll have one of the major sessions will be around these things. Or, one last example, former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand will be there because we'll be holding a summit of what is called the Christchurch Call, which is an initiative that was taken after the Christchurch terrorist attacks, working with tech companies to withdraw any terrorist material online in less than an hour after it's been posted, to avoid the repetition of what we saw after the Christchurch attack, which was the terrorists having filmed everything and put everything online, and then was reproduced everywhere and serving as radicalization material. So the initiative that was born out of that will have its summit during the Paris Peace Forum around Prime Minister Ardern, or Dame Jacinda Ardern, and President Macron. That's just one of the examples of what we'll be doing.
Right, a very important conversation given in the light of the last week's event.
Yes.
We've learned very quickly that the disinformation has played a role already, also in polarizing opinion on the internet, online. So thank you very much, Justin Vaisse. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and good luck with the Paris Peace Forum. And